She's Having a Baby is a 1988 film written and directed by John Hughes, and we have a cast including Kevin Bacon, Elizabeth McGovern, Alec Baldwin, Holland Taylor, and quite a lot of other very big names for a couple of seconds. And I'll talk about that in a second, because that's the reason why I wanted to watch this. Kirstie Alley is in it for maybe 2 seconds at the most. We also have Ted Danson, Woody Harrelson, and John Ratzenberger, and various other pretty big names, but I'll come back to that in a moment. The film is about a newly married couple, and eventually they find out they're having a baby, and it's about mostly their emotions around this, primarily focusing on Jake and his perspective. And honestly, there's not a lot of narrative. I didn't think it was very interesting. For me, it was mostly driven by the character of Jake. I did think he was a very well-written character, really interesting, really enjoyed watching Kevin Bacon's performance there. But unfortunately, that aside, I didn't really get a lot out of this. I didn't think it was that interesting. The scene with the lawnmowers, though, I did enjoy. And I won't explain it. I won't say what happens with the lawnmowers, but that scene did bring me quite a lot of amusement. So there were some good bits, and Jake is a well-written, interesting character. Kristy is not that interesting, but she's not boring and she's not badly written. I just didn't think she was particularly fascinating. It's definitely creative in some places. In others, it's a little bit dull. So I didn't love it, but I wouldn't exactly say it's a bad film either. It's not exactly badly done. It's just quite slow, and ultimately I enjoyed a little bit of it, but certainly not a lot of it. So I guess I recommend it if you're interested in the cast, or if maybe the subject matter really appeals to you just now. But personally, I found it to be a little bland, the lawnmower scene aside. And ultimately, I don't regret the time spent watching it, but I wouldn't say I found it to be that interesting. Some good moments, some good performances. Jake is an interesting character, and definitely a creative film, but not completely enjoyable. However, I was desperate to get to the end of the film, not because I wanted it to finish, but because at the very end, over the credits, we have a bunch of other actors, really big names, I'll name a couple of others in a moment, just naming baby names, suggesting names for their child. And I think Kirstie suggested 3 names, if I remember rightly. There's quite a nice moment with Ted Danson and Woody Harrelson. Harrelson suggests a pretty interesting name at one point. And it does seem to me like maybe they knew the film wasn't going to be amazing, even though the film itself has some pretty big names in it anyway, but they decided to just put a whole bunch of these very brief cameos at the very end to try and attract a bigger audience by getting these big names. And if you want to see, there's a huge list on Wikipedia of all of these names. And to mention just a few of them, we have, of course, Kirstie Alley, Ted Danson, John Ratzenberger, and Woody Harrelson. We also have Dan Aykroyd, Matthew Broderick, John Candy. John Candy had quite a few suggestions, which was good fun. I have to say the ending was largely more enjoyable than the bulk of the film. We also have Michael Keaton and Olivia Newton-John, and just so many great names that it was a bit odd, but that part of the film I enjoyed, so I don't really have any complaints about it. So it's not a great film, but it is a creative film. The lawnmower scene I thought was pretty brilliant. And ultimately, while I didn't love it, I don't regret the time spent watching it. And if there's anything about this that you're curious about, then I'd say maybe it's worth watching.